This is another book review. I'm going to call this section basically preserving meat. But there's also it also goes into fruits and vegetables preservation a little bit. Two of these books are published by Story Publishing. The actual authors are different from Story, but they all fall under that same how-to do thing, the subject matter. This one here is this was written by a guy named John J. Metler. He's was a doctor of veterinary medicine. He went to the Pacific Islands. He followed the U.S. Army and the Navy around the Pacific Islands after World War II. As an Army veterinarian, his job was to teach the islanders how to butcher livestock and game for their own use. How to butcher and preserve meat for their own use, home use. So this is a pretty in-depth book. If you've never butchered any kind of animal before, this is a really good place to start. Toward the back, he starts with the biggest animal, which is a beef cow. Shows you the basic anatomy. Shows the ideal place if we're using a firearm, where to place the shot so that basically so that you don't get yourself hurt while you're trying to drop a cow. Once you put a bullet in a cow's head, and if it doesn't die, he's not your friend no more. So you shoot it, do the throat cut, then he'll take you through step by step, all the way through. Shows you where your primal cuts are. Shows how to break down the primals into smaller pieces down to the individual table-sized meat cut. Then you switch from cows to hogs, because that's usually the mainstream. That's usually the next animal. Go from pigs to veal. Same deal. He'll take you all the way through. Goes from veal to lamb. Touches on deer and venison. Switches back to poultry. To rabbits. And then there's an entire section here called less popular meats. This is where he gets into goats. Goes into goats, horses, bison. He even touches on woodchucks and some other animals that you normally wouldn't associate with being a meat animal. The last part of the book is all recipes and indexes. overall, this is a great book to have. It's a good book to read about. He spends a lot of time. It's published in 1985, so it's uses modern terms and procedures and materials. So you basically you can read this book. You can use the instructions without having to interpret it to the year 2000, 2012, 13 safety things like you would have to with the books that were published back in the 1800s or the early 1900s. There's a lot of difference between 100 years. This is another book that's published by Story Publishing. Canning, freezing, curing, smoking, wild meat and game. This book doesn't touch on anything that swims. This book will take you through. If you have questions about how to store fish, there's instructions here on both shellfish, clams, fish that have fins, fish that don't have fins, and then the usual suspects up in the front of the book: venison, fowl, poultry, how to process large animals like deer, curing and smoking ducks, lamb, making sausages, curing hams, lots of recipes for, say, making corned beef. That's timely for today. Making corned beef in your refrigerator, canning your corned beef, and building a smokehouse, and how to make a smokehouse with a remote fire pit, and with your stovepipes underground, so that you don't end up with a fire inside of your smoke chamber, which is useful. Talks about the problems with curing your own meats and the insects that you need to pay attention if they're around and you have a really bad issue. But it also will tell you how to get rid of the problem if they've developed in your cured meats. It'll tell you how to prepare a ham, how to inject saltwater brine, where to inject the saltwater and brine, and the entire list of instructions, including the safety issues for using a pressure canner. Really good reference manual. And then the next step is preserving food without freezing or canning. There's an entire list of different ways to preserve your fruits, vegetables, and meats without freezing or canning. And they start off with a fruit cellar, which is chilling. It's not freezing, it's chilling. There's methods that have been used for centuries. One of them is called an underground silo, which is the same idea as a fruit cellar, but this was used in the desert. They dug down into the desert sand and found it was cooler down there. Until then they would layer up their vegetables in sand that was dry, and somewhere in here. All right. The chapters that are covered is lactic fermentation, preserving oil, vinegar, with salt, without salt, preserving in sugar, sweet and sour preservatives, preserving in alcohol, and then there's a big section in the back for choosing which method is better for your particular circumstance. Because there's some things that just won't, there are some substances that'll work better in oil, but it won't work if you're preserved in sugar. So preserving in oil, preserving in vinegar, preserving in sugars, and just lots of information about practices that a lot of people don't even consider, because it doesn't anymore. People will talk about dehydrating, freezing, or canning, but there's many more methods that are just as safe. They're more labor intensive, but they're just as safe. So I'm going to break this one short. The next ones are going to be the 4 books that are in the back row. They're all about meat sciences, but I don't want to make this video too long, so we'll do that in the next one.